That was a rough Warriors game, Dub Nation. They fall after blowing a 26-1 lead, or a 26-1 run, I'm sorry, to the Dallas Mavericks. I'm very fortunate to have the new beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, CJ Holmes, with me to discuss that and so much more. CJ, you ready to go?
Let's do it, man.
Beautiful. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. He's CJ Holmes. You can follow him on Twitter at CJHolmes22. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me at Dog Surf Roadshow. CJ, you're at an airport, man. Where are you traveling to? What's going on?
In Minneapolis, man, for tomorrow's Warriors Wolves game.
Is that early? Isn't that earlier than usual, or is that standard to get there that soon?
No, it's an early game tomorrow. I just wanted to go ahead and get out here so I can get settled, figure out my hotel situation. Dubs
Nice.
practice at 5 p.m. So I figured I'd just go ahead and get up in the morning and hop on a plane.
I love it, man. You're diligent. You're on it. And I believe this is your first solo trip as a beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. I could be mistaken with that. So best of luck on your first solo venture out there. Let's talk about last night's Mavericks game first off. And again, when the home team blows a massive lead and they give up a 26-1 run in the fourth quarter, it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows, a lot of questions. What was your initial response, initial feedback, initial thoughts on how the Warriors finished last night's game to the Mavericks?
Well, they didn't finish. That's the thing. Through the first three quarters, I mean, it just looked like it's going to be one of those nights for the Warriors. The home crowd was electric. They're clicking on both sides of the ball. And, through three quarters, the Mavericks were, crumbling under the pressure a little bit. Even in that first half. And then you can see Luka was visibly frustrated, picking up a technical foul. The Dubs were rolling, man. And then all of a sudden the fourth quarter came around. Spencer Dinwiddie got hot, and it seemed like the Mavericks just kind of rallied around him. And, when a team gets a little bit of life, especially in the NBA, and, they believe that they can, win a game, I mean, that's a lot of energy, man. And the Warriors couldn't match that. The Mavs ended up going on a ridiculous run, and the Warriors just couldn't find a way to stop the bleeding. It's a bad loss. It's a bad loss, no matter how you spin it. The good thing is, in the grand scheme of things, the game doesn't really matter. But it's definitely concerning heading into postseason play because those are the kind of games that you can expect in the playoffs, right? With games tight in the fourth quarter games, teams are never out of it. And, the Warriors are going to have to learn how to close. And, it isn't like they've blown every lead in every game they played this year or they've struggled closing all year long. But, to see back-to-back home games where you blow 20-point leads, I mean, that's concerning, man. So it's better that the Warriors, learn this tough lesson now than in the playoffs where it matters for real.
Yeah, let's hope they learn. And there were a few concerning things. For starters, you were talking about Luka's struggles early on, how he turned it around. One thing that stuck out to me was his struggles, I felt like, and his frustrations were largely because of Jonathan Kuminga. That was like the one player that seemed to be giving Luka a lot of problems there. And there was no sighting of him at the end of the game. I know Kuminga struggled defensively. He was minus 14 in the plus-minus total. But at the same time, I mean, this is a player that it's now obvious. He's got the skill set. He's got the tools to succeed in the NBA. I know he's just a rookie. But to not see him in the fourth quarter, for me, was a little disconcerting. What were your thoughts on that? Do you agree or no?
I mean, he definitely had a lot of rookie moments throughout the game. A few turnovers here and there, being out of position here and there. And, to be in the game during crunch time, you got to develop the trust of Coach Kerr. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and Jonathan has done that gradually, throughout the season from what I've seen. But, in a game like that, it probably just made more sense just to, not have him on the floor. Get some vets out there. I mean, you even saw that Moses Moody was out there late last night.
Well, that's what I was about to bring that up. Is like, if that's the case, if he's distrusting of rookies, then why is Moody out there late in the game and not Kuminga? I know Moody gives you better 3-point shooting, but Kuminga is, I don't know. He had such a hot February that to just penalize him for 3/4 of so play when he's been playing so consistently for a month. I don't know. I just felt like he just pulled the strings way too fast on that, and I was just wondering if you noticed that or if you thought that similarly, because I was frustrated. But I don't know about you.
I honestly can't say I did notice it.
Okay.
I know that Kerr's closing lineups have been a polarizing topic all season long, and that's kind of continued yesterday. And that's magnified more when you blow a 4-quarter lead.
Absolutely. And, another interesting thing, and I know you're new to the Bay Area, so I apologize if I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you that you're still learning in the process about this Warriors team, but I hope you're familiar with this. You were previously with The Athletic covering the NBA, and you seem to be a basketball aficionado. Stephen Curry, for nearly his entire Hall of Fame career, has had a steady rotation where first and third quarter he played the entirety of it, and then second and fourth quarter usually come in at approximately the 6-minute mark. With that rotation, you gave him 36 minutes a game. He played 2 whole quarters where oftentimes, especially those third quarters, he'd go on fire, and then he'd come in and finish games in the fourth quarter at the end when it matters most. But this year, we've seen a totally different rotation, and it's unpredictable. It seems to be based largely on when Kerr feels Steph should be playing. And last night, that stuck out to me because even though Steph played approximately 10 minutes of that fourth quarter, I swear to you, I didn't even notice who was out there the first half of it. And that 26-run, a lot of it was when Steph was on the floor, and he looked exhausted. And what I'm curious to know from your opinion is, why do you think Kerr is doing this new rotation? And at this point of the season, we're well past the 2/3 mark. We got 21 games remaining. Is there a possibility of maybe reverting back to what has worked? Or, are you seeing something differently? What are your thoughts on that?
Like you said, I'm new to the beat. There's a lot of things about the team I'm still learning and, trying to pay attention to. But, just kind of off the top of my head, there's still seeding on the line, but the Warriors are going to the playoffs no matter how you spin it. So maybe in Kerr's mind, he's just trying to keep Curry fresh. These regular season games more or less don't matter at this point unless, you're considering seeding and things like that. But, the most important thing is to have Curry fresh come the postseason, No Draymond Green, no Klay Thompson out there yesterday. Curry, it was being relied on heavily, getting a lot of usage. And that's going to tire you out, So, maybe taking Curry out late in that fourth quarter kind of gave him a chance to experiment with some other different lineups, see what other guys are going to step up, things like that, kind of test them in a close game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna share the box score from last night's game because a few things were glaring in this, and I love your insights. For starters, I was colossally disappointed that Otto Porter Jr., who has been one of the few players that you can consider to be a model of consistency for this Warriors team, only played 21 minutes. I don't even remember him being out there at the end. I know he was a -17, but again, he's a veteran player who has proven himself time and time and again. Nowhere to be found at the end. And then Jordan Poole, who the team desperately needed with Klay Thompson being out, had one of his worst games of the year, 0 for 11 from the field, 0 for 7 from twos, 0 from 4 from beyond the arc. He got blocked near the end there, which made Dub Nation remember that Andre Iguodala block from the 2016 NBA Finals. It was very reminiscent. Just your thoughts on those two variables of the game, or if any thoughts.
The bench definitely struggled as a whole yesterday. I believe the entire bench was minus,
Correct.
coming out of that game. And, it's just not what you want to see. Like you said, again, Kerr's giving a lot of guys different opportunities and experimenting with different lineups right now. And these role players, your Otto Porter, your Jordan Pooles, they're going to be relied on heavily, come playoff time, to keep guys fresh, keep the rotation sharp. And these guys are going to have to produce. Games like yesterday, that's not what you want. That's not what you want to see out of your bench. So that unit, those second and third units are definitely going to have to pick it up as we inch closer to the playoffs.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to take a quick break here. You can stick with me. It's entirely your call, CJ. When we come back, I want people to learn about you because you're the new beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, but you have an interesting background. You played this game, you know this game, and I'd love to learn more about you so that everyone else can also learn in the process. But first, I need to talk about a longtime sponsor of Locked On, and that's Built Bar. CJ Holmes, have you ever had a Built Bar?
I have not.
I still haven't yet either. My partner in crime in this program, Dieter Kernbach, loves these things. Almost everyone who has tried these things swear by them. It's that time of year where people give up on their New Year's resolutions. But this year, if you stick to them and eat right, you can thank Built Bar largely for that. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because you can enjoy eating these protein bars. They even have puffs, which have marshmallowy flavors in them. They're infused, they're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat that's covered in 100% real chocolate. These protein bars have just a fraction of the calories of your typical candy bar, only an eighth on average of the sugar that a candy bar has, just a fraction of the net carbs, yet 17 grams of protein. Go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We'll be back with more CJ Holmes here on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. He's CJ Holmes. You can follow him on Twitter at CJHolmes22, and you can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dub. CJ, before you were hired to be the new beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle covering the Golden State Warriors, you were with The Athletic. And at least on your Twitter bio or somewhere, I can't remember where I read this, it mentioned you used to play for the Auburn Tigers, Charles Barkley's alma mater, a Division I, world-class, huge program when it comes to sports and college athletics. Tell us about that first. I mean, how many years did you play at Auburn, and what was your role there?
Yeah, man, I was a walk-on on the basketball team for 3 years, man. I played my high school ball at IMG Academy. Had some D2, D3 looks, coming out. But, my goal was always to play at a big school. I want that, big school, big campus experience. Long story short, I had two teammates that were already committed to Auburn my senior year, Nick Peller and Brian Green Jr. And, one of my coaches just, made a call over to Tony Barbie at Auburn. It's like, hey, you guys want to guard? And he was like, sure. So I committed to Auburn without, ever seeing the campus, without ever stepping foot in the state of Alabama in my life. And
Wow.
All I knew was some guy named Cam Newton used to play there a couple years before I got there.
Yep.
But it was great, man. Playing the SEC, travel around the country, living that student athlete life. I do wish we won more games. We're in a lot more games these days than we did when I was in school. But I'm really proud to call myself, I'm really proud to call Auburn my alma mater and to, be a former player for that program. And, the journals in school at Auburn, and, taught me everything I know. And
that's incredible.
If I could do all over again, I would.
Of course, dude. I would do anything to be a student athlete at a school like that. I mean, you must have been living the life. I'm sure someday you could write a book about your experience just there. Where are you from originally, by the way? What's home?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. So you're from D.C. to Auburn. And then, do you mind if I ask how tall you are? Just so I get some perspective as to how you were on the court.
6'1".
Okay, so you're a point guard, I'm guessing? Shooting guard, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
kind of like an undersized hybrid type.
Gotcha. That's what I was. I'm only 5'10", dude, so I had no chance in college, but I played through my 30s. 5'10", what can you do with that? So you graduate Auburn, and you actually pursue journalism. And so how did you eventually end up with The Athletic?
So I graduated in 2016. My first internship was at Sporting News the summer heading into my senior year. I wrote for the school paper for my sophomore, junior, and senior years. It was cool, man. There were some days where we get done with practice, have to run back to the locker room, throw on something presentable, go out to the court to cover a girls' game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So graduated in 2016. Did an internship with the Opelika Auburn News before moving back home for a year. That's 2016, 2017. I'm working at Ralph Lauren at Potomac Mills Mall. Doing some freelance stuff for like ESPN, SB Nation. What was it called? SEC Country used to be a thing. I don't know if it's still a
Okay.
thing. At the Atlanta Courier Journal, writing about Auburn. I actually got into, I almost got to the Bay a lot sooner. I got into Cal Berkeley for grad school. I was going to do their new
Congrats.
media. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a prestigious program.
I was going to do their new media program. But then I ended up getting a job as a digital producer at the Dallas Morning News. And I was there for a year, and then the Athletic hired me to cover the Arizona Cardinals. And then over the last 4 years, 4 years, the Athletic, I held, different roles. I was second on the Cardinals beat. Then I was more of a general assignment kind of guy, writing on the Cardinals, Suns, Arizona State basketball and football. Then I became the full-time University of Arizona beat writer covering basketball and football. Then I was moved from Tucson to Philadelphia to cover Big Five college basketball. And then late last year, like November, I moved from college basketball to the NBA news desk and features. And then I got the opportunity of a lifetime, man, to cover the Dubs out here in the Bay.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. And the great news for you, CJ, is grad school is always waiting for you. I went back to grad school in my 30s after like being in the media for almost 20 years. So my day job is a professor, but I do this, and one other podcast now is like just fun. The Warriors are my team, and I've always loved doing this. So whenever at any point when you're ready, dude, grad school is waiting for you, and it is enlightening if you ever decide to go back. What's your ultimate goal? Like if when all is said and done, I mean, maybe the Chronicle is your end job, but ideally, like, would it be ESPN? Like, would it be like working for a team? Like, what's your dream job when all is said and done? The big goal.
I don't really know, man. My goal for the last 5-6 years was to end up an NBA beat writer, and I've been able to do that by the age of 28. Well,
Nice.
I turned 28. I turned 28 on March 9th, actually. But that was my goal for a long time. Now that I've reached that, I gotta evaluate what I want to do next. But at the same time, I want to enjoy this and live in the moment.
Yeah.
And, do the best I can to cover this team in a way that the fan base will appreciate. And next time I hop on the pod, I actually sound like I know something.
No, you're fine, man. You're fine, dude. In all honesty, man, I'm just glad we're meeting, and I'm glad that the viewers can be introduced to you. And I guess what like in your words, what can people expect from your coverage? I absolutely love and respect local newspapers for providing the type of coverage that really no one else is doing. I mean, you're actually traveling with the team, so you're gaining incredible insights and knowledge. But what can readers of the Chronicle and what can people, just the casual fans, expect from your coverage?
In the near future, a lot of insight and knowledge about the team. But overall, you guys can expect coverage from the perspective of someone who more or less has been in these guys' shoes at one point. Someone who understands the game, someone who understands what it's like to have a 6 a.m. practice, play back-to-backs, things like that. So I plan on bringing a lot of insight into the mind of the players through my coverage, and I plan on writing stories that really, really dive deep into this team and kind of transcend the traditional box score.
I love it, man. You're bringing a fresh perspective that you're right. A lot of journalists just don't bring to sports. I mean, you actually played this game at a D1 school and you understand it. I mean, that's huge. I respect that tremendously. CJ, I want you back on the show at some point sooner than later. And we'll talk Warriors, but I'm so happy we met. I'm so happy the audience got introduced to you. You can follow CJ Holmes on Twitter at CJ Holmes22. And you can read all of his reports, you someday maybe columns, by just simply subscribing to the San Francisco Chronicle. That's sfchronicle.com. And do your stories ever show up on SF Gate as well, or are those like two totally separate entities?
I have absolutely no idea.
I love it. Just look out for CJ Holmes, and you can follow you get all that stuff. CJ, thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming on, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, CJ. Take care, man. That was CJ Holmes of the San Francisco Chronicle, and it was such a pleasure. I know he's super busy, and I'm just delighted that he was able to fit me in on his schedule. And when we come back, I'll delve a little more into that Warriors game because there was a lot that really concerned me. It was a combination of a failing from personnel and from coaching. I mean, there really is no one that can really escape the criticism from that game just because it was just bad all around. But first, let's talk about one of our longtime sponsors, and that's BetOnline. Football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. And perhaps more importantly, or at least as important, you can follow this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Dieter Kurtenbach's going to join me tomorrow through Thursday. Connor Letourneau is going to join us for one of those shows. And then Friday is to be determined. I'm trying and hoping to get my friend Larry Kruger on. He originally said yes, but now it's a maybe. And for good reason. Look, his time at KNBR just came to an end. And what he says and does is very sensitive and important at this point. So he initially told me he was going to do it. Now he said he has to think about it. I totally get it. So if he joins us Friday, great. If not, either I'll have another guest or I'll just host this thing solo. But I need to open up this box score again that I was sharing with CJ Holmes just a moment ago, just because of the fact that there were a lot of issues here. Now, first off, I want to apologize for the people following me on Twitter because I, honest to God, did not realize that Stephen Curry was playing for a lot of that fourth quarter. I mean, I saw the minutes that he played, which was 38, and I was a little surprised when I saw the box score because I thought I watched that entire game. I was visiting my mom and stepdad up in Napa, where the family home is. I was watching the game there. I might have stepped away for a second in the fourth quarter, and I think a lot of people did, given the fact that the Warriors controlled that entire game. If you just look at the box score, I mean, the Warriors outscored them by 14 points entering the fourth quarter, and the Mavericks just went on that insane 26-1 run. I just remember stepping away, coming back, and every time I come back, that lead's getting smaller and smaller. But I don't remember Steph being in there at all. And then someone called me out on that today on Twitter, and I was like, "What the F?" And so I literally watched the fourth quarter again and realized the reason why I thought that is because Steph was non-existent for that entire fourth quarter. His plus minus for the game was -4, which is very rare by Steph's standards. And it led to really a gripe on my part over the general rotation minutes and that Steph is playing right now. His entire career, at least for most of it, once the Warriors, their starting five and really the big three were established around, and when the Warriors really started exerting their dominance in the NBA in 2013, from that point forward until this year, Stephen Curry had a rotation where he would play the entire first and third quarter of every game. And he'd come in at around the 6-minute mark of the second quarter, and he'd come in around the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Now, and that would come out to a minute total of 36 minutes, which is what you want Steph to be. Last time he played 38, two more than I think the team would like him to play. And for playoff games, for really big moments, sometimes you'd see Steph brought in a little earlier than usual in the fourth quarter. That was his routine. And there's been clips this season where Kerr decided to change that. And now the rotation's inconsistent. It's unpredictable. And I had no problem with it. And honestly, look, for the people who have a huge issue with Steve Kerr, I'm not going to be someone who's calling for his head. Okay, look, he had a bad game last night. He's had a few bad games here and there. And I do think his one flaw as a coach is making in-game adjustments rapidly in a timely manner. Sometimes it just takes him a long time to make adjustments. I don't know if it's stubbornness. I don't know if he just doesn't see it. I don't know if he firmly believes in sticking with the plan, regardless of how the game's going. But Steph, his rotation has changed this year, and now it's completely randomized almost. I really could not sit here and tell you, based on my personal observation, and I really think based on nearly everyone's observation, I don't think anyone could tell you when he comes in and when he comes out. It's become very unpredictable. And so in last night's game, for example, those first 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, Steph was awful. He was virtually non-existent. They were routinely doubling him. And where the problem really emerged is that this starting five right here was playing for that bulk of the fourth quarter, at least until near the end. And I think at the end, Jordan Poole got the leash yanked, but they just were not. This five in that fourth quarter were largely responsible for that 26-1 run by the Mavericks. Andrew Wiggins did not have the greatest of games. 7 for 16 from the field is not great. 2 for 6 from three. Okay, not great. Okay, it's okay. So you're hitting the Mendoza line at that point. But he was only 2 for 5 from the line. And a lot of the offense in that fourth quarter was Wiggins just playing ISO ball. That is not Warriors ball. We didn't see the ball movement we're accustomed to. But Steph was largely absent. And Jordan Poole was in there a lot too. I guess I should say Poole was in there a lot, maybe for Wiggins for a lot of those minutes. Maybe they're swapping back and forth. Maybe I have to just watch that fourth quarter again. But Jordan Poole had an atrocious game. And if you want to criticize Kerr for the rotation minutes, I don't know how you can criticize Kerr in regard to Jordan Poole going 0 for 7 from the field, going 0 from 4 from 3. His only points came from the free throw line. He was minus 12 in his plus minus. He only had 1 assist. He did have 6 rebounds. I'll give him credit for that. But he just did not play a good game. And this has been the issue with Poole for this entire season. And I thought recently this was resolved, which was inconsistency. He really stepped back in terms of just throwing up wild heaves. Which I loved. But last night he took a couple of wild shots. He just had a horrible game. One player that I thought should have played more was Jonathan Kuminga, who did have 5 fouls, but still, when Jonathan Kuminga was playing on Luka Doncic, Doncic was frustrated. And one thing, if there's one weakness to Luka Doncic's game that I've noticed, is that if you flummox him, he doesn't want to keep attacking. He will start giving the ball up. We saw this last week when the Mavericks played the Utah Jazz. Rudy Gobert was playing great defense on him, and Doncic was so frustrated, he just gave up. He stopped attacking when Gobert was guarding him. He'd either give the ball up or he'd try to find a switch, and Kuminga was having a very similar effect on him. And so why Kuminga only played 17 minutes? I mean, I know he's a rookie, but so is Moody. And Moody played 25 minutes in that game and only scored 5 points. 5 points. I know his plus minus was 14, which means he was doing good things to a certain regard, but he was only 1 for 4 from 3. He was only 2 for 6 from the field. He had no trips to the line. And Kuminga is a vastly superior player than Moses Moody is right now. He is. I firmly believe that is an objective statement. And so what is that does frustrate me. I don't care if he has 5 fouls. I'd rather he foul out than just sit there with the 5 fouls. And I wanted to see more Kuminga. I want to see more minutes from Otto Porter Jr. I don't care if he's minus 17. 21 minutes is simply not enough. And a huge thing that killed the Warriors last night, a huge thing that catapulted the Mavericks and really instigated that 26-1 run, which is, again, just atrocious, was the Mavericks switching to a small ball lineup, which is customarily the Warriors' strength. But when you're missing Draymond and you're missing Klay Thompson, it's not as much of a strength at that point. But Otto Porter Jr., I don't mind him playing the 5 if you're playing another team that has a small ball lineup out there. Porter Jr. should have been out there to finish the game. He was nowhere to be found. I know JTA's been struggling a lot, but to only get a minute 38 from him in a game like that, Bielitsa was horrible. I vividly remember 2 shots he should have easily made. They were like layups that he missed. I don't know why, but he did. So yeah, CJ was absolutely right that the bench was atrocious. And this box score I'm sharing with you right now for the YouTube audience can see that. For the people listening to the podcast, I just told you all the stats. Jordan Poole, nightmare game. Kuminga, not a great game, finished with 9 points, 4 rebounds. But again, he was frustrating Luka Doncic tremendously. Luka Doncic is a very strong player, and he plays bigger than he looks. And with that skill set, he makes life difficult for a lot of people. But he was not having his way against Kuminga. I'm disappointed Kuminga was not out there. I'm very disappointed. And then Jordan Poole, I mean, look, you could make the argument that 19 minutes is just not a lot. It's not a lot. I mean, there's no debating that. So, the Jordan Poole fans out there might argue, well, he should have gotten 15 more minutes to find his groove. You might be right about that. You might be right. Kerr still does not fully trust Jordan Poole yet. That is evident by how many games this season you have not seen Jordan Poole finish games. The closing lineup of a team is always indicative of who a head coach trusts the most. And the fact that Jordan Poole is routinely not out there in closing minutes is very indicative of that. Steve Kerr just does not trust him yet. But Moses Moody was out there for a lot of the fourth quarter. That was just weird. It was very nonsensical. I didn't like Kevon Looney being out there in the fourth quarter. I think Looney's clear strength is playing against bigger lineups. And when a team goes small ball on the Warriors, I'd prefer a little more speed. And Looney was in there for nearly that entire 26-1 run. And I just found that inexcusable. Jordan Poole was out there for nearly that entire 26-1 run. When Steph Curry left the game in the fourth quarter, the Warriors were still up 4. When he came back in, they were up 1. But I really think this rotation that Kerr has implemented this year, which is different from what he's always played, is a failure. It's a failed experiment. Go back. Here's what I would do with Steph's rotation. Keep the first half exactly like you've always had it. Entire first quarter, half the second quarter. The only change I would implement is breaking up that third quarter. So maybe he plays the first 6 minutes, then sit him for 2, have him play the last 4 minutes of the third quarter, then sit out the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter and have him out there fresh and ready to go for the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. It's only a slight deviation from what he's been accustomed to his entire career. But most importantly, Steph is playing the entire second half and then some of the fourth quarter and being fresh in the process. Regardless, the system that he has right now for Curry, I don't like it. I'm officially on board with a lot of Dub Nation who's been griping about this the entire year. Last night to me was very indicative that this randomized pattern of substitutions for Steph and Curry is not jiving. There have been clips of Steph where you can read his lips complaining about being taken out when he's, for example, on a hot streak, or just being taken out at just the most random of moments. And I personally don't get it. It's nonsensical. Another gripe I have about last night's game is Gary Payton II, who I think needs a lot more than 26 minutes. When you look at these minutes, here's where, and the minute totals are what drives me the most crazy about last night's game. Gary Payton II should have played at least 5 more minutes. At least. Jonathan Kuminga should have played at least 5 more minutes, especially in the second half, to give Luka Doncic some problems because he was playing great on him. I know he got the 5 fouls. Let him foul out. Let him at least play until he fouls out. I don't like just 17 minutes for Kuminga. I would have rather had Kuminga get Moody's 25. I would have also liked to see more of Otto Porter Jr. Damian Lee wasn't doing anything out there. So why not give Porter Damian Lee's minutes? Why don't you give Porter Bielitsa's minutes? Even if a veteran is struggling, I know you can look at the stat sheet and he was minus 17 for the game, Otto Porter Jr. But I don't care. Plus minus does not always tell the whole story. And he's a very valuable piece of this team. His skill set's complete. He could play basically 1 through 5 or 2 through 5 on that court. And to only have him playing 21 minutes against one of the top teams in the West, I just don't get that. I don't get it. But that's what happened. This was just a failure on everyone's part. The Warriors had numerous failures on a personnel level. And again, I'm looking at Wiggins missing key shots in the fourth quarter, going just 7 for 16 from the field, only 2 for 5 from the free throw line. I'm looking at Kerr for playing Looney at the wrong times, for not giving Gary Payton II more minutes, for not giving Kuminga more minutes, for not giving Porter Jr. more minutes, and for playing Steph at just the wrong times. If Stephen Curry is going to play 10 minutes in a fourth quarter, let him play the last 10 and take out minutes from the third. But ideally, let him play the final 8 minutes of the fourth quarter and take those 4 minutes out of the third. It's the end of the game that matters the most. This Warriors team typically, clearly not last night, but typically does finish games strong. And that's because Steph is usually in there. And I want more minutes for Gary Payton. I don't know how many times I have to say this. All right. He was 6 for 11 from the field. He was out there for a lot of that 26-1 run, but I don't blame him for that. I really don't. And he was 1 for 5 from 3, which isn't great, but that's not what he's there for. He's not there to be a 3-point shooter. He's there for defense. And he's there because he's a lob threat. And he incredibly at 6'3" has a fantastic post-up game. So adjustments are needed. And this coaching staff is brilliant. I don't know why they're missing so much of this, but they did. And so the Warriors now find themselves 43-18. I think it's time to give up all hope for that top seed if people haven't already. I'm now officially out. If they had won that game, they'd only be 5 back. Different story. Now it's over. And the fact that they've lost in similar fashion to both the Mavericks and the Nuggets at home is also very disappointing. Now, look, if Klay Thompson was out there, I think this would have been a totally different story. And clearly, if Draymond Green is out there, this is a night and day story. But even without Draymond, the Warriors should be winning these games. I mean, I think really strongly believe they have the talent to do so. And James Wiseman, there's no update on him, but they haven't ruled him out for tomorrow's Minnesota game either, which is kind of fascinating. So the possibility is there. We could see him during this road trip, or this mini road trip. It's a weird schedule they got coming up where they play in Minnesota on Tuesday, then they go to Dallas on Thursday. Yeah, they're hopping all over the place. I believe it's a 4-game swing coming up. We could see James Wiseman on this trip. We could. I think at this point it's a matter of not if, but when. And I'm personally very excited for that. So I don't tell you, Dub Nation. Again, I love this team. So I hate the fact that so much of my emotion is predicated on the Warriors. Every time they win, I'm like happy. And every time they lose, and especially when they lose like that, I just have a sour taste in my mouth. I'm grumpy. And anyways. So tomorrow, Dieter Kernbach's going to join me. We'll preview that Timberwolves game. Could be a first round playoff preview, folks. And if there's any consolation, LeBron James was booed at Cryptocurrency Arena or Staples, whatever they call that place now. They booed him. I don't remember Jordan ever getting booed. Please stop with those comparisons, folks. Stop the comparing LeBron to Jordan. If you want to say LeBron's the second greatest ever, fine. I will let you claim that and not argue back. Just stop with the Jordan comparisons, folks, please. There's just no comparison at all. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Again, Dieter Kernbach's joining me tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. Connor Letourneau, I believe, is going to join us on that Thursday show as well. Thanks again to CJ Holmes for joining me. And now make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Thanks, folks. Later.